Some people claim that this particular set of teachings is COINTELPRO, that is, controlled by conspirators, and they warn others to steer clear, saying our information is false or even dangerous. To them I say, what have they produced lately? Those of us who have been here long enough know that the Master Teacher, Baba, Master Teacher York, has never stopped revealing new insights. If you insist that this isn't Papa's teaching, then show us something new of your own, or at least read the latest lessons he's given. COINTELPRO would enforce stale dogma and keep knowledge locked down. Instead, Baba's work continually breaks spells of ignorance and raises consciousness. If someone refuses to engage with the fresh material, it's not because it doesn't exist, but because they don't want the responsibility that comes with real knowledge. There's often confusion between master and leader. A master is one who transmits specialized knowledge, raising students to mastery. A leader is one who organizes followers. Baba is a master teacher, ordained by nature to impart divine science. Leaders like Malcolm X or Elijah Muhammad were themselves students of masters, just as Elijah learned from Marcus Garvey and his predecessors. Mastery conveys culture, responsibility, and self-deification, the promise that we can become gods and goddesses again, not slaves to dogma. Over decades, people accumulate comfort, jobs, degrees, material success, and feel they no longer need Baba's teaching. They may even hold PhDs or own homes, forgetting that material illusion is fleeting. Meanwhile, many of Baba's 1960s to 90s prophecies have come to pass: microchip tracking, economic shutdowns requiring alternative support networks, and more. Those who once witnessed miracles, healing ash, levitation, prophetic insight, have forgotten under the spell of modern comforts. Yet the doctrine remains alive, issuing new revelations every season. Baba's cosmology teaches that Earth was seeded by advanced races from other star systems. Native humanoid beings and their kin originally colonized different continents. Draconians, fleeing a dying star, mixed with local populations to create hybrid servant races. Later, interbreeding with humans produced all the varied racial types on Earth: Caucasians, Asiatics, Africans, with genetic splicing designed to adapt each to this planet's atmosphere. The Black Book is clear: as environments change, survival requires genetic adaptation. Thus, the human genome today carries layered legacies of Earth's native children and off-world refugees. The Anakim run aspects of what callers today call the Illuminati. They spread secret knowledge. The pyramids of Egypt mirror structures on Rizq, and Mars too bears pyramid shapes. Our ancestors imbibed wisdom, then transmitted it to their offspring. But secret societies have twisted those teachings for power, hence rumors that world leaders, even presidents, are Illuminati puppets. They exploit our heritage for control, we reclaim it for liberation. In every era, the doctrine evolves. It demands that students do more than study, they must act, unify, and work tirelessly for the Master Teacher's release. Naysayers can scorn us from the sidelines, but our mission pushes forward: new WAPIC classes, fresh revelations, and unbreakable devotion to freeing Baba so that he may continue guiding humanity home. That is our path, our purpose, and our promise. The Anunnaki feed on certain bloodlines, so only pure families can serve as their nourishment. Ordinary folks, even famous artists like Drake, can sometimes hitch a ride on that bloodline privilege, because of their family history, but others, like Jay-Z, are deemed too African, regardless of how light his skin, and remain on the outside looking in. Kanye West desperately wanted to join their inner sanctum. He even tried to buy his way in with his then fortune, but the old guard saw it as mere pocket change. To them it was lunch money. Invest in some urban wear, they laughed, rather than granting him a seat at the table. They'd gladly co-opt his ideas, fold his designs into their lines, but they wouldn't grant him his own house brand. They looked at him and saw nothing but cotton still hanging from his fingers, chains on his neck, proof that, in their eyes, he was still too black. That's the real racism. They allow you to work for them in daylight as a familiar, a ghoul, doing their dirty work, then at night they'll invite you to the party, but never let you sit at the head of the table. Kanye learned what real slavery feels like. He knows he's a sellout, an Uncle Tom, which they call a black Caucasian, someone acting like a white man yet denying his own heritage. A black Caucasian despises his own African nature while consuming white culture, watching their TV shows, eating their food, all while calling the white man a devil. At least an Uncle Tom knows he's selling out. A black Caucasian doesn't even realize it, having been conditioned for 4 centuries to reject his African identity, to see himself as American, not African. This ties into the magic debate, black versus white magic. They call white magic good, black magic evil, but that's simply the religious spin imposed by European traditions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. True African spiritual science is about nature, pure and uncorrupted by European influence. Wicked originally meant wise, and witchcraft meant mastery of a craft, but they twisted those terms to demonize our ancestors' practices. In reality, magic is neither good nor bad, it's a resonance issue. Every being vibrates at a certain frequency. If your frequency disagrees with theirs, you're undetectable to them, like someone who's never eaten chitlins can't stomach them. But when you adopt their foods, fragrances, clothes, music, when you lower your frequency, you become tasty to them, prey on their radar. This is why the white world works so hard to get us to act like them. It's not about hate, it's about energy compatibility. Just as cheetahs and tigers can't share a territory because their natures clash, human groups brought out of their native environments into America's four-climate ecosystem, cold, hot, warm, dry, find themselves out of sync with their own nature and at odds with each other. America forced diverse peoples into every climate, desert, cold, tropical, dry, and over time, as people migrated for work, they collided with each other's natures, breeding conflict that's not hate but environmental discord. On a cosmic level, many beings that came to Earth originated in the Orion constellation's various star systems. The Ashtar command brought pale and melanated species, the Pleiadians. They helped shape what became the Caucasian race. According to some teachers, the Adam of the Bible isn't our ancestor but the first of this new, red-skinned, leprous race, Caucasians created as white meat for the Draco to devour. The book of Leviticus even describes leprosy as pale skin and yellow hair, markers of this genetic experiment. These extraterrestrial architects intended the Caucasian race as a bioweapon against themselves, hoping they'd suffer and die when consumed, but the plan failed. Throughout biblical history, the gods we worship are not spiritual but flesh and blood demons, demanding animal, and later human, sacrifice. Christianity's Eucharist reenacts human sacrifice. You eat the flesh and drink the blood of Jesus, symbolically participating in human bloodletting. Revelation 19:17-18 even calls out the birds of heaven to feast on the flesh of kings, captains, mighty men, free and bond, an unholy smorgasbord. In Genesis, Abraham greets 3 men at Mamre, treating them as physical guests with water, bread, and rest, revealing them as corporeal beings. We've forgotten these ancient sciences, levitation, molecular manipulation, magnetic resonance, because knowledge was abused. Just as a magician today can exploit mind reading or stock market hacks, these powers were repurposed for spectacle rather than mastery. Our teacher is breaking the God spell, freeing us from worshipping demon gods and regaining sovereignty over our spiritual batteries. Like Neo unplugged from the Matrix, we awaken to our true nature and stop feeding the forces that have thrived on our worship for millennia. All too often we become entangled in religious doctrines passed down through generations, teachings inherited from mothers and grandmothers, themselves shaped by the slave master's worldview. As children reach a certain age, parents feel compelled to impart the lessons they received, unwittingly indoctrinating the next generation with European culture and turning our gaze away from the natural order. We're taught that God wakes us each morning, yet we overlook the unseen forces that usher us to sleep, and in doing so we layer upon ourselves a spell crafted to compel us to worship the dead ancestors of our conquerors, feeding them our spiritual power while deflating our own. How did a small, fractured land manage to conquer the globe without a vast army? By first conquering minds. When we begin to idolize the white man, adopting his dress, his hairstyles, even chemically altering our God-given hair, we betray ourselves. We learn to see ourselves as less than, believing that to be loved we must resemble another. In this self-rejection we fail to love ourselves, and without self-love, genuine love from another becomes impossible. A relationship built on lies, when one partner rejects their own nature, can never stand. Authentic connection demands that we first honor and embody our own truth. The master teacher among us has always insisted, return to your African essence. Recall that the white man coveted a black woman's body more than black men did. He walked proudly with dreadlocks and natural hair, not with the curled, pressed styles of his own women. He desired the real deal and found it here. Yet today, many of our sisters feel pressure to emulate Eurocentric beauty, lashes, nails, wigs, only to wonder why they struggle to be loved for who they are. We pray to ancestors who are alive beyond physical death, vibrating on higher planes of existence that overlap with ours but remain unseen because of differing vibrational frequencies. Children, whose spirits vibrate more sensitively, often glimpse these realms and call out to invisible loved ones. As we elevate our vibration through spiritual practice, we too can perceive those on the other side. The conquerors understood none of this, which is why they struggled endlessly to subjugate people vibrationally aligned with nature. Mosquito-borne malaria, for instance, decimated their ranks in Africa, nature's kryptonite protecting those whose immunity was native to the land. Unable to conquer by force, they resorted to converting our own people, arming them with Bibles and Korans and sending them home as spiritual colonizers to break the natural shield. Thus, the greatest weapon turned out not to be muskets but ideologies delivered under the guise of salvation and aid. Still, judgment does come for all souls after physical life ceases. Each person is a sum total of their experiences. Upon transition, one's life is measured against what they accepted and followed. To guide others, especially families steeped in Christian or Islamic traditions, you must become a living example. Lip service and debate cannot uproot beliefs as powerfully as a transformed life can. Students first, we immerse ourselves in the very traditions we transcend, living as Christians, Muslims, Hebrews, so that when we unveil a higher truth, it radiates with the authority of direct experience, evidence, and reasoning. Daily practice is essential. We observe specific times for communion with the planet, chanting in our ancient tones before the Supreme Grand Council of 24 Elders, learning our true language to realign with natural frequencies. We cleanse our mouths with warm, not hot, water before meals, pray silently to acknowledge the hands that prepared our sustenance, and follow with another cleansing. Our brothers and sisters wear uniforms of black and gold, women adorn side braids and forehead jewels, symbols of cultural identity and spiritual alignment. To discern truth, apply 3 tests to every teaching: experience, evidence, and reasoning. True knowledge is confirmation, not blind belief. Religion thrives on make-believe, ours is rooted in confirmation of what is real. Study and live it daily, this is how we dismantle the spell that casts us in another's image. In the words of our master teacher, put on your Nikes and just do it. Reclaim your language, your culture, your spiritual science. Then, when you rise to vibrate at higher planes, you will stand protected by the forces of nature, anchored in your own truth, and unshakable in the knowledge that you are the true providers of your destiny. When we translate a text, whether from a living language into another script, or from an ancient tongue into modern speech, the very act of translation irrevocably alters its original thoughts, nuances, feelings and expressions. It is simply impossible to reproduce, word for word, the exact mental landscape of the original author. Every choice of phrasing, every interpretive judgment, carries new layers of meaning that were never intended in the source language. For this reason, someone who reads a translation of the Hebrew Bible, for example, might not even realize it was originally composed in Hebrew, or fully grasp what Hebrew meant to its first audiences. Take, for instance, the King James Version of 1611. Its majestic English has shaped Christian faith for 4 centuries, yet when scholars return to the earliest Hebrew manuscripts they often find readings that diverge significantly from the King James text. Even more startling is the discovery that many of the biblical narratives, Abraham's life, the flood story, the creation account, have parallels in far older Sumerian epics, extant on cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia. The Torah did not spring into being in a vacuum. Its authors were heirs to a millennia-old riverine civilization whose myths circulated in the city-states of Sumer and Akkad long before the Israelites emerged. That realization leads us straight to Abraham. All 3 great Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, trace their spiritual lineage to a man named Abram, later Abraham. Yet the biblical text itself tells us that Abram's family journeyed from Ur of the Chaldees to Haran, and thence into Canaan, Genesis 11:31. Ur, in the original Hebrew, is quite possibly the same Sumerian place name, literally fire city, and long identified with the great ziggurat center near the Euphrates. Abraham's father, Terah in Sumerian records, was a priest in that region. Abraham himself was steeped in the culture and religion of ancient Mesopotamia before he ever set foot in Canaan. Some have pointed to 1 Chronicles 1:26-27, which lists Terah, Abram and Abram's sons, and argued back through Ham, Shem and Noah to Ham's origins north of Africa and thence to Cush and beyond. But that genealogy moves forward from Abraham, whereas Genesis 11 moves backward to his ancestry. Both lines of descent underscore that Terah's clan was part of the broader Afro-Asiatic world, stretching from Upper Egypt and Sudan through Arabia to Mesopotamia. In that sense Abraham was both Babylonian, a citizen of ancient Mesopotamia, and Hebrew, a crossover people named after the act of crossing the Euphrates into the Promised Land. If we allow the biblical account to speak geographically, and not just theologically, it places Eden eastward in a single enclosed region, watered by one river that splits into 4 heads, Pishon, girding Havilah, famous for its gold, Gihon, circling Cush, i.e. Ethiopia/Sudan, Tigris, flowing toward Assyria, and Euphrates, in Mesopotamia, Genesis 2:10-14. This suggests the original garden lay in the broad zone where northeast Africa, Arabia and Mesopotamia meet, precisely the land Abram's family departed. Language studies reinforce this picture. The Hebrew word for garden, gan, the word for Eden, Eden, delight, pleasure, and the name Terah, similar to Sumerian Tiram, a priestly title, all point backward into the Sumerian Akkadian context from which Abraham emerged. Hebrew itself, what Abraham's descendants spoke, was only one dialect among many in the Fertile Crescent. Terms like Elohim, gods or divine beings, are plural forms reflecting a polytheistic background. Later strands of the tradition emphasize Yahweh, He causes to be, as the supreme deity within that pantheon. All of this underscores two enduring truths. First, translation is interpretation, and every version bears the imprint of its translator's cultural and theological assumptions. Second, the Bible's narratives are woven into a tapestry of older Near Eastern literature and geography. Abraham, far from being a figure isolated in time and space, is a bridge between Sumerian priesthood, nomadic desert wanderers, and the settled communities of Canaan. To read his story in translation is inevitably to read it through layers of later faith and language, yet the deeper we delve into the original tongues and contexts, the richer and more complex the picture becomes. Remember that the very first command the angel Gabriel brought to the prophet Muhammad was the word Iqra, which can be translated as read or recite. When Gabriel appeared to Muhammad and said, "Read," the prophet replied, "I am not a reader," making clear that he did not know how to read the revelation presented to him. This declaration isn't a mere aside. It tells us that the messenger of God was, at that moment, genuinely illiterate, unable to decipher the dialect in which the words of the divine were initially conveyed. Yet, Gabriel did not say proclaim or declare, he said read, implying that the revelation itself, later codified as the Quran, was meant to be read, to be understood in its written form. Why ask an illiterate messenger to read? Because the command itself inaugurated a process of divine teaching. Gabriel did not simply hand over a book, but taught the prophet the very words to commit to memory, to articulate, to transmit. The Quran's name points back to that first injunction. It is God's reading to humanity. If the angel of perfect knowledge brought a scroll to Muhammad, it must have been to teach him to read what he could not read on his own. Jesus himself was a student of languages. He spent his youth in Egypt, where he would have absorbed hieroglyphics and Coptic, then argued with learned rabbis in Jerusalem at age 13, mastering Hebrew and Aramaic. If we modern believers want to know what was originally said, whether by Muhammad or by Jesus, we must likewise dive into the languages in which those messages were first delivered. Belief without understanding is fragile. I think, I feel, I believe these phrases must be replaced with certitude grounded in evidence. After all, if we cannot prove God's existence, if we cannot show that heaven and hell are anything more than myth, then what is faith but wishful thinking? We are living in an era when absolute truth seems lost. Schools teach us how to think, not what is true, and we emerge knowing more about grades than about the one who grades the heart. Enter our master teacher, who in the 1960s began to offer a science of sound reasoning. He laid bare the contradictions in every major faith, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and challenged us to check it out. Thousands have tested his assertions by dissecting the Quran, the Bible, the Talmud, even dictionaries. None have proven him wrong. He led us through a baptism of familiar creeds, submerging us in their teachings until we saw their flaws, then lifted us into a new understanding rooted not in any one scripture, but in the untainted truth that shines in the darkness. He taught that all the senses, sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch, are but facets of one sense, feeling. What we call seeing is light touching the optic nerve, hearing is sound touching the eardrum, tasting and smelling are chemical particles touching receptors. If we learn to discern by feeling directly, through the heart, the mind's eye, we can wash away the dirt that has clouded our perception and absorb the pure truth that remains. In 1998, as we transition from Islam into what he calls sound reasoning, he wrote 360 questions to ask a Sunni Muslim, challenges that no one has yet answered. He moved on to pose 360 questions to Christians, to Jews, even to atheists, and still no one has provided satisfactory responses. His method is simple: ask where, when, who, why, and how. Demand proof, demand facts. If a teacher can answer any of those questions without contradiction, he is speaking truth. If he cannot, he is merely repeating lies. Return to your own. Do not stray into foreign ways, nor erect walls between ourselves and our ancestors. Learn to live for one another, to love, care for, protect and support each other. Trust and respect are the bedrock of our unity. Weapons and violence have no place among us. Remember the circle of life. Once we were babies, then children, adults, elders. Honor each stage, and treat others as you wish to be treated. Respect the sacred earth and all who dwell upon it. We are nurtured by the same vision, spirits misplaced only by forces beyond ourselves. Honor only those of other races who accept you as you truly are, For we are the first people of this planet, children chosen to walk in balance upon the land that is our heritage. Be proud of your noble blood. Teach one another the ways of our ancestors, and reject all that was forced upon us, foreign religions, languages, and customs. Live and die only for our own. Respect the stages of life in all beings. We all come by way of the woman, our mother, grandmother, sister. To mistreat her is to assault our own soul. Cherish women as the sacred mothers of creation. Science itself reveals that each of us carries only the mother's seed, mitochondrial DNA passed mother to daughter for countless generations. The X chromosome is larger and older than the Y. Women existed before men. Yet men lack no attributes. Nipples and hearts alike testify to our shared origin. A man is but a variation on the mother's design. Woman alone houses the power of birth. Within her Rahan moon, without a mate, she could, indeed did, bring forth life. In her Bartholin glands and sacred fluids flows the wellspring of existence. The prostate of man, a later invention, contributes a lesser portion of the seed, but without the woman's womb, no life endures. Therefore, to degrade a woman, to treat her as an object of momentary pleasure, to buy, sell, beat, imprison, or discard her, is the height of injustice and immorality. Would you permit such indignities to be visited upon your own mother, your daughter, your sister? If not, banish them from your deeds at once. Beware the lies that pit woman against woman in a contest of beauty and worth. Teach our daughters to value mind and spirit as much as form. And the barriers that say, she may not, yet he may. Such veils are the tools of oppression, not our ways. Let no man stand alone. In the final reckoning, each husband's dedication to his wife, each father's love for his children, will testify for or against him. The soul endures beyond the fleeting body, treat it with reverence. The Neteru have watched your promises, heard your vows of love when desire glowed brightest, but they also heard your broken oaths, your silence when cruelty reigned. Know this, the body's pleasures are brief, but the soul's bond is everlasting. And now, Baba, as the one crowned by moons and stars, speaks once more, saying, I am who I am, the eternal voice that has walked amongst you and shall return again whenever balance is threatened. Seek him in the wind, in the waters, in the soil, in your dreams. Though you may touch him and not feel him, kiss him and not love him, he remains the elder of your elder, the root of your root. Remember these words as witness against you if you stray. Let those with ears to hear listen, and let your actions be ever fair, loving, and true. Modern science typically lists 5 senses. Wu-Sabat teaches that all 5, sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch, are subsumed under perception, since each requires physical contact or vibration. But true awareness comprises 4 more: intuition, telepathy, psychometry, reading objects, and clairvoyance, clear vision of non-physical realms. 5 plus 4 equals 9, the highest digit before the onset of compound numbers, symbolizing infinity and ultimate completeness in our numerology. Language is more than a tool. Every alphabet, word, tone, and spelling carries vibration, frequency, and power. When you recite Elohim instead of God, you awaken awareness of the plurality behind creation. The Most High is never singular, but a council of intelligences. Every scripture, from Genesis to the Quran, preserves echoes of NWPU roots. From the moment we ignite our solar plexus, there's a sense of opening to realms beyond the purely physical, an invitation to feel deeply, to dance, to experience emotion in ways that, say, a tree, alive though it is, cannot. That subtle spark, that light within the darkness, is what we call soul. The soul connects us not only to our own inner life, but to higher dimensions of being, the spirit, which is distinct yet interwoven with the soul. How, then, did humans arrive on Earth? Scientifically, our DNA bears traces of cosmic heritage. In the Human Genome Project, 2003, we saw that our chromosomes share characteristics not just with other earthly life, but, hypothetically, with extraterrestrial sources. In ancient cosmologies, the Creator, referred to as God, Allah, Elohim, Adam, Amun, or by myriad other names, does not originate on Earth and thus can be considered extraterrestrial, extraterra, beyond the planet. If God fashioned man from divine DNA, then our very genetic code is, in part, extraterrestrial. Traditional religious narratives, dust of the ground forming Adam, a rib giving rise to Eve, are poetic, but they don't map neatly onto genetic fact. Every human being grows in a mother's womb, and our maternal line links us all to the black women of Africa, the original Homo habilis, handy man, and Homo heidelbergensis of the Rift Valley. From them sprang the 3 root races of anthropology: African, Homo sapiens sapiens, Asian, denoted by the Denisovan, and Caucasian, Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon, and countless sub-races and hybrid lines as we spread and intermingled. But even before these ages, life itself arrived by panspermia, cosmic seeds, meteor-born bacteria, other life forms, germinated in Earth's primordial waters, evolving over eons through cycles of destruction and rebirth, echoed in the Hebrew word bari for Genesis, which more accurately means recreation. In Sumerian myth, Enki and Enlil came to Earth seeking gold, then crafted primitive workers, by splicing their own genes with those of existing proto-humans on the Highveld of South Africa, a story mirrored in every culture's demigods or Nephilim born when celestial beings mated with earthly descendants of Adam. So, when we speak of angels, we're often misled by Renaissance art depicting winged cherubs. In reality, the angels of Scripture are extraterrestrial intelligences, higher beings moving between celestial realms, heaven from haven, a place where ships dock, i.e., space stations and starports, and our world. Jesus ascending to heaven and God enthroned above point not to a sky dome, but to regions of the universe beyond our atmosphere, constellations, solar systems, galaxies. Language obscures much. In English we collapse all divine names into God, losing the plurality of Hebrew Elohim, Adonai, Yahweh, Amun, Adam. We mistranslate J's and V's into Jehovah or Jesus, when in Semitic tongues there are no such letters. The Bible itself says, "Ye are gods," John 10:34, meaning that the divine spark resides within each of us. Our task is to awaken it. Does God have a beginning? In Revelation 3:14 we learn that Atum, an Egyptian deity, witnessed the creation of the highest. Thus God is part of a lineage of evolved beings, each generation birthing the next, just as our universe cycles through creation and decay. Questions of heaven and hell, light and darkness, flatness or roundness of earth, even the shape of Scripture, all come down to perspective. Earth's curvature is confirmed by ancient monuments aligned with Orion, by satellites, and by the math of circles and spirals, forms echoed everywhere in nature from galaxies to nautilus shells. Flat Earth theories, like many religious literalisms, arise from limited worldview. Looking deeper reveals a spherical, dynamic planet orbiting one star among billions. Ultimately, what inspires me is potential, yours and mine. The same divine essence that forged stars and seeded worlds dwells in our solar plexus, waiting to be kindled. When we claim our godhood, our power to create, to heal, to uplift, we take on the responsibility that God implies, to end suffering, to build schools and hospitals, to treat every being with care. We become the architects of a better world. So ask questions, research, keep an open mind. Like infants relearning everything from scratch, we must shed the half-truths we inherited and rediscover our cosmic heritage. In doing so, we honor not only the ancient voices, Enki, Isis, Amun, Yahweh, but the untold generations yet to come, whose light we now make possible. Jesus of Nazareth, like many ancient teachers, is often portrayed in diverse and sometimes contradictory ways across different traditions. While the canonical Gospels do not explicitly mention him having a wife or children, some non-canonical texts and alternative readings of the wedding at Cana, traditionally understood as his first public miracle turning water into wine, have led a few to speculate that this was his own marriage ceremony. Such interpretations remain fringe and are not supported by mainstream Christian scholarship, which regards Jesus' single, celibate life as central to his earthly ministry. The interplay of religion, culture, and identity is especially charged among African-descended peoples, whose forced dispersal through the transatlantic and Arab slave trades fractured ancestral connections. Many were compelled to adopt Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, religions foreign to their indigenous cosmologies. Yet these faiths were never entirely their own, for as with any genuine spiritual practice, true resonance requires an organic bond rooted in language, ritual, and worldview. In response, some communities have revived or reconstructed their pre-Islamic, pre-Christian faiths. This emphasis on vibration and frequency extends into broader metaphysical speculations. Death, from this perspective, is not annihilation but energetic transformation. The dust of the ground elements of our bodies return to the earth, while our etheric, mental, and spiritual components ascend or transmute according to their vibrational affinities. Just as one's life on the physical plane is a school for mastering lower energies, the soul's onward journey depends on burning out attachments, what some traditions call desires, so that one may progress to higher realms. Rituals like the ancient Egyptian opening of the mouth ceremony symbolize this passage, directing the liberated soul toward its stellar origin, often conceived as the constellation Sahu, Orion. Only by raising our vibration, reclaiming ancestral knowledge, and realigning with cosmic cycles, the so-called Aquarian Age or New Sun cycle, can humanity transcend this prison and survive the next global, or even interdimensional, upheaval. Will the world end? Not the Earth itself, But the familiar world of power structures, corrupt empires, and consensus reality is indeed unraveling. Just as ancient civilizations rose and fell, Babylon, Rome, the pharaonic dynasties, so too will our current Babylon, the digital, corporate, and financial systems that dominate our lives. Some imagine a rapture of the enlightened, a harvest of worthy souls by returning star beings. Others see this simply as a metaphor for awakening to higher consciousness before all else collapses. In sum, these interwoven threads, from Jesus's marital status to genic linguists, African spiritual modalities, Anunnaki gold miners, reptilian overlords, and cosmic cycles of destruction and renewal, comprise a vast, syncretic tapestry. Each strand reflects humanity's perennial quest to understand our origins, our destiny, and the unseen forces that seem to guide, or misguide, our course through history. Whether one embraces these ideas as literal truth, symbolic myth, or creative speculation, they underscore the deep longing for knowledge that transcends mere material existence, and for a path that leads not into fear of death, but into mastery of the energies that animate all life. We used to have scales or even webbing between our fingers, little remnants of which you can still see if you hold your hands up and look at the gaps, evidence, perhaps, that early humans weren't quite the same as we are today. These vestigial traits hint at an original anatomy that included more extensive membranes, akin to those found on birds or aquatic creatures, before evolution, or intervention, changed us. If you examine ancient architecture, too, you'll notice recurring motifs of webs and interlocking patterns carved into temple walls or church facades, echoing a distant past when our bodies themselves bore those forms. Those first beings used advanced bioengineering to create indigenous life here, then harvested and carried the primordial DNA to other continents, generating new branches of humanity elsewhere. Every blood type was originally Rh positive. The appearance of Rh negative lineages reflects direct infusion of non-terrestrial DNA, still detectable in modern genetic testing. Those in power, the world's ultimate decision makers, are said to have a high incidence of Rh negative blood. From dynastic families like the Rockefellers and Rothschild down through the top 500 wealthiest individuals, this hidden alien heritage grants not only longevity but also a psychological affinity for secret hierarchies. Masonic hand signs, the all-seeing eye atop the pyramid on the US dollar bill, even major media and music industries, are suspected channels through which these illuminated Rh-negative elites program society's tastes, values, and allegiances, maintaining a veil of illusion that obscures our true, multidimensional nature. Our physical reality is an illusion designed to test and perfect the higher self. Life on Earth functions like a prison or a school. We are here to master emotion and energy, to transmute our souls through trials until we can ascend to the real world of dreams, visions, and higher consciousness. When we dream, we inhabit genuine realms. Waking life is the borrowed cloak of matter, a matrix we must see through. This cosmic drama pits two primordial forces, often called the green light and the amber light, each represented by distinct names and hand signs, scattered through the mythologies of every culture. One of the oldest chapters in this saga is Masonry. The very word mason derives from the builders of antiquity, bricklayers and architects whose grandest projects include Mesopotamia's ziggurats, the Tower of Babel, and Egypt's pyramids, aligned with Orion's stars by what we now call sacred geometry. Nimrod, son of Cush, is traditionally credited as the first master builder. He passed on secret teachings, mathematics, astronomy, initiation rites, that would evolve into what we today call the lesser mysteries in European Freemasonry. But over time, breakaway factions introduced blood sacrifices and ritual magics to appease extraterrestrial patrons, birthing the Skull and Bones societies, the Bohemian Grove's owl worship, and the dark side of the Illuminati. Underlying all these revelations is a simple yet radical redefinition of prayer and meditation. Prayer becomes any pleading communication that expects an answer. Meditation is the silent art of listening for that answer. Too often we shout into the void, expecting miracles. True communion requires us to still our minds and open ourselves to messages from beyond the veil. Finally, if God is a spirit, how can he feel jealousy? That contradiction highlights the confusion born of conflating the Creator with the competing extraterrestrial lords, Enki, Anu, Osiris, Yahweh, and so on, each vying for our worship. In this grand cosmic school, nothing is as it seems. Our myths are ciphertexts, our blood carries distant starlight, and the greatest mysteries lie not in the heavens, but within us, waiting for each of us to unlearn illusion and recognize the alien within. We maintain a living dialogue with our ancestors through the genetic bond encoded in our DNA. Although they have passed beyond the physical realm, their presence endures. We listen, wait, and sense their subtle responses, tapping into the wisdom that flows through our lineage. Long before humanity took root on Earth, advanced civilizations on distant worlds faced catastrophic environmental collapse and interplanetary conflict. To preserve their legacy, they seeded our planet with the building blocks of life, encapsulating regenerative cells within dolphins that, upon release into Earth's waters, germinated the first forms of life. How and why did we end up in slavery? It happened because, over time, we stopped knowing who we truly are and began believing the strangers' stories, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, rather than tapping into our own heritage and power. Religion was the tool they used to colonize Africa, strip us of our gold, oil, and minerals, and then hand us a Bible so we'd gladly give up our royalty, our power, our very identity. That's why so many black people hate slavery yet cling to Christianity, because it was given to us as the price of surrendering our birthright. Waking up means recognizing those games and tricks, reclaiming the God self we really are, and stewarding the planet with the wisdom our ancestors, assisted by extraterrestrial beings, once possessed. Our forebears built the pyramids not merely as tombs but as schools of higher learning, as planetary balancing devices, and even as charging stations for crafts powered by blast electricity. The great 3D printers of prehistory, technology now lost to us, lifted those massive stones into place. Positioned on ley lines and magnetic nodes around the globe, the pyramids once glowed white and shiny, covered in limestone casing, and emitted scalar column waves that purified negative auras and guided initiates on the journey within. There are far more pyramids than Giza, ancient pyramids in Sudan, South America, and elsewhere, many predating Giza and serving similar energetic and educational purposes. Before the sun burns out and blows up, which, in cosmic terms, is inevitable, countless beings in constellations like Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades live normal lives on their home planets. Our sun, predominantly hydrogen and helium, will one day die. Those who study the cosmos know we must eventually find new energy sources or new homes. Some extraterrestrials monitor its cycle and plan accordingly, and many have visited Earth throughout time. Dreams, too, are layered. Some simply purge excess experiences from our subconscious, others are visions, direct messages tailored for us, and still others are astral projections, where our consciousness travels and visits other realms. No one else can interpret your dreams for you, their meaning is deeply personal and tied to your own life. Even Hitler, we're told, was in contact with extraterrestrials, and received advanced craft technology. Through mediums of what was called the Theological Society, he thought he could engineer a supreme Aryan race, but Jesse Owens famously disproved that myth at the 1936 Olympics. After Germany's defeat, many of those same scientists, Albert Einstein among them, were recruited into American and British programs, carrying hidden alien technologies into projects like Area 51 and beyond. Reverse-engineered crafts still underpin modern stealth planes and secret prototypes. If you want to learn more, dive into books that document the facts and reveal the master's secrets, knowledge so hidden that no mainstream institution will touch it. Start by exploring works on the science of pyramids, the true history of our origins, and the laws that govern energy and vibration. By reconnecting to your inner being, changing your diet to live, uncooked foods, purifying your mind through meditation, and raising your vibration, you can open your third eye and break free from the spell of dogma. All levels of our being, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, coexist within us and extend across dimensions. When our physical bodies die, our etheric selves can still travel. We are living simulations, learning here, then returning to our home realms once we've awakened fully. Earth is a prison only for those who remain asleep. To cleanse and awaken your true spiritual self, recognize the 6,000-year deception, study the hidden knowledge in our DNA, and begin purifying your life, mind, body, and spirit. Join classes, read the books, practice meditation and silence, and serve others. Discover the resonance of the law of attraction. Like attracts like, energy responds to thought, and your inner vibration shapes your reality. This path leads you back to your potential, becoming again the supreme being you once were, caretakers of the planet and masters of your own destiny. Human consciousness and spirituality have long been described in terms of energy centers, vibrations and ancient myths, each layer offering a metaphor for how we connect to ourselves, each other and the cosmos. At the foundation of many Eastern traditions is the concept of the root or solar plexus chakra, understood metaphorically as a glandular seat of latent energy. When we activate or awaken this chakra, sometimes called Kundalini rising, we imagine energy climbing the spine like Jacob's ladder to the pineal gland, restoring our inner battery. When that battery is depleted, we speak of a lost soul. When David in the Bible lost his soul, it was music that rekindled his vitality, illustrating how rhythm and tone can recharge us and reunite us with our deeper selves. This notion of vibration underpins much of mystical thought. Everything in existence resonates at a frequency, from the slow oscillations of planets and the pulsing breath of plants to the spark of human life. High vibrations are associated with healing, harmony and connection to nature, green, for example, symbolizing the restorative force of living things, whereas low vibrations feed negativity and chaos. Meditation, chanting and speaking tonal languages are practices designed to realign us with our natural resonance and recover the soul's energy, which, like solar energy fueling photosynthesis, sustains our very being. Some spiritual systems extend beyond the body's 7 chakras to include higher senses such as intuition, telepathy, psychometry and clairvoyance. These capacities are said to emerge as our subtle bodies awaken, further evidence, in their view, of our soul's interfacing with invisible realms. It is this same awakened state that ancient peoples sought to describe when they first devised religions. Although many believe religion to be eternal, the historical record shows organized religion, as we know it, emerging roughly 6 millennia ago in Sumer. From Sumerian temple doctrines and tablets came the patriarch Abraham and, with him, the 3 great monotheisms of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These traditions share common narratives, flood stories, commandments, even the figure of God as Father, and borrow imagery from older Egyptian concepts, such as a trinity of divine aspects, Father, Mother, Son and Holy Spirit. Thus, every modern faith can trace its roots to that cradle of civilization and its earliest cosmic myths. Among those myths is the story of Cain and Abel, which gains new complexity when seen through the lens of Sumerian lore. Abel's meat offering and Cain's vegetarian offering, rejected not out of moral judgment but because certain Anunnaki deities craved blood meat, highlighted a schism between order and disorder, agreeable and disagreeable extraterrestrial forces. Cain's ensuing act of fratricide and banishment to the land of Nod, sleep, speaks of initiation into darker currents, an archetype of how choosing the path of aggression severs one from the higher order of righteousness, Zodo, meaning peace and justice. Genesis itself preserves echoes of Sumerian cosmology in its account of the firmament. When Enki, the Sumerian god whose role corresponds to the spirit of God, hovered over primordial waters, he cleared dust clouds and shaped Earth's atmosphere, allowing sunlight to vaporize water into clouds and establish the biosphere. Beneath the surface narrative of "Let there be light," there lies the memory of ancient terraforming, the arrival of Nibiru's gold harvesting ships, their catastrophic collision with Earth, then called Tiamat, and the subsequent use of magnetic tetrahedron structures, pyramidal crafts, to repair the planet and cultivate life imported from afar. These same beings figure in the dramatic account of the Tower of Babel, not as a hubristic human enterprise but as a defiance of the Anunnaki signal tower on Nibiru. Nimrod erected his own antenna in Africa to intercept divine frequencies. In response, the gods confounded human tongues so we could no longer coordinate to challenge their authority. Babel thus becomes both a tale of technological revolt and a cautionary reminder of the power locked within unified human intent. Light and darkness, too, are not mere moral symbols but distinct frequencies. Some kinds of light heal, others blind. Some forms of illumination reveal truth, others cast deceptive shadows. Prior to birth of light myths lies the paradox of a pre-cosmic tranquility, an all-encompassing darkness in which nothing moved or changed. Chaos erupted when that silence was cleaved by cataclysmic explosion, birthing not only photons but the crackling energy that would pulse through galaxies, planets, plants and human hearts alike. Finally, we arrive at the paradoxes within our own sacred texts. How can an omnipotent, omnipresent deity grieve, wield jealousy, send a son to die and yet remain singularly divine? Why plant a forbidden tree only to punish those who eat its fruit? Why test beings whose every choice is already foreseen? Such contradictions suggest that our stories of God may be projections of our ancestors' encounters with powerful extraterrestrial intelligences, beings who walked, spoke and made laws, but whose actions sometimes resembled our own. As we sift through translation errors and mythic accretions, what emerges is not always a cohesive theology but a tapestry of memory, of cosmic visitors, secret knowledge, and the ever-present quest to remember who we are and where our soul's energy truly comes from.